dogs, raccoons, so I don't see too much of
Irish,
it. But
yeah.
it hasn't been that much. Really stuff, you just come to leave it here, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Come on, go.
Purple's, yeah, I've got it, I think it's a 15-inch jack. Yeah. I can go, I got this house.
That's about the
I know
same.
you're-
I think this is
You're allergic to
17,
walnuts.
that's
Is it
about
gonna,
the
is it
height.
gonna bother you if I
Yeah.
turn it
My
down?
mother worked.
No, I've got a mask.
I didn't think about that until I pulled it out of the bag just
He's
now.
the.
Nope,
and I
all
told
good.
he's
All right.
I want to be able to keep the and like pack it in skinny things, rather than cut it up and lose so much on the.
I have done, been able to.
I bought one of those,
adjust the bands
they use them
so I
more
can
on
do
the
accurate, thin,
the UK.
flat
Because
bands.
two,
Or the way
filter on the
they
top
use their thing and it
with
just
the
follows
mask.
this line
How
around.
do you like it for wearing it for a long time? Is it get heavy?
Thank God I
It's
have
not
a
heavy
new
at all.
jig
Yeah.
to get it semi-small, because
like
it's
the
still,
face shield is maybe a little small.
I
So it's hard
probably
with the
just about
the thick plastic.
We had some trouble
But,
with the
Case
tires.
in point,
I figure as long as it's not.
The tires.
breathing only inside that thing.
My
Yeah.
tires
So
are
I
okay.
turned two
Like all the tires went to.
the other day.
My tires are
And then
okay,
I
it
just,
doesn't,
when I
it
got done,
doesn't wobble on
went upstairs,
the
undressed,
tires.
took a shower.
And it's more,
Because if I, start doing this and
no matter
this.
how long bearings.
So, but wearing that mask, I was like, this should be all right. And I was saying.
Underneath and above.
I was like, yeah,
Just trying to get.
No,
Which one'd you get?
the JC. Whatever it is, it's on the UK side.
See, mine's all
Because I'm kind of in the market for one, because like I've got the beard and I haven't found a mask that
I
sits
really wanted.
with the glasses and with the
know
beard
what
and the
I'm
mask.
doing
So I'm
wrong.
looking at getting into
In
it.
the
That one's just
Oh,
over
yeah.
500.
What?
The next one, Roland just bought the next one, I think it was closer to 2,000. It's the one with
The backpack and everything.
backpack on the belt. He says it's real
Great, I believe it.
but real.
Yeah. But when you're doing it.
I don't know how the beard would work, because it's, but it's, I'll bring it in.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I think that's next on my list, because I just, was it maybe in January, I ordered myself a set of the Trent Bosch DVDs, which is the 1 inch. It's like four. I was like, go big or go home, I can say turn smaller stuff. But
I brought this small,
Eventually, I
just
want
a tool.
to.
I didn't, well, I can't sharpen
yeah,
Because
those little itty bitty
I
tips
need-
on there.
I've gotten
I'm
parts
not
of
the
the jig
biggest fan. They have a learning
to
curve.
make it from one way.
Well, you know what I did?
But I need to
One of
have
the guys
a machine
at the other
shop
club
do some
was
work
a
for me.
machinist.
Oh,
So that I
I
can
gave it
cut
to him.
put the board on the lathe.
So I still have the tools
Cut it
and I can put that tip back
this
on.
jig.
So he made it so I could.
Instead of doing it on the
Put it back
bandsaw,
in.
where you have to cut it in half.
Yeah,
You do
it's
everything.
super
Glue
Yeah.
the sides
Yeah.
But
together
it comes in
in
and out.
addition
Yeah.
to
But now I can
this.
just go around cutter that much.
And what I've
Yeah.
done
Sharpen.
Yeah,
is.
they're,
I was
it took the
still
first couple
learning
times
how
I
to
sharpened it, I was like, I
craft
should have
paper
ordered
for
replacement
40
tips.
And
I could go right through
So,
these, but
because if you
once you
do
get like, once you get the right kind of movement, figure out what part
Buy
of
the
the.
tip, the little tip. You have.
I gotta order more, but I haven't worn them, that much yet, so.
do it at.
I have a
So
set
it's
of those
actually-
that I'll probably never use.
Yeah.
Just,
But
I bought, obviously bought a set, because I figured I would need them,
really good for.
but I can't.
Get it.
I tried everything to sharpen them out.
On-
This ain't me.
Honestly, when I need to halfway through tuning, I usually just hit it with
You know,
the
when you're
part.
got
Never
mounted
actually
on
works out pretty
something
well.
solid.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
mounts
it's
the banjo.
before you start it off, I sharpen them, but like halfway through, if they're getting a little, if you just stick the diamond card right in here, and then every once in a while, just get a little rubber on the sides, all right.
Maybe I'm just overkilling it, I don't know, it's just.
No, there is a distinct learning, because it's such like, you can take it off so easily.
Here's a young fella right there, can find out.
Once I get it cut, I can run it through. Nice and smooth before moving it on.
And he even roast by him, who brought who?
I dragged him along. I saw him
You
sitting on the side of the
saw
road.
him, you saw him on the side of the road,
I
and
said, I gotta get that guy.
pick him up.
Hey, I got some wood in my truck. Should I bring it in? I got a couple of pieces of, I got ash, and I got, what else? Butternut.
I mean, if you wanna bring it in, put it away, you can, or if they're big, just tell people to go get it from your truck. Like, are they luggable or?
Yeah, they're lovable. I cut them and I split them. coming down, get rid of the pith, and then I coated the ends, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see, I'd like to have a piece of butter on it, like to see what's in it.
Yeah, I'll bring them.
Go ahead.
They were.
Yeah, and I got a piece of, I'll say you wanted ash.
And while you're out there, my Toyota's there, the pull the Jeep down, it's right there.
Sweet, thank you. I'm sorry.
One person is handcuffed in my ass.
I don't know, like if you were the, ends there. or
Roll them
you're
35.
For a little bit
When you get a
further
chance.
This
month, next month, whenever.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I think your membership card's in there.
Go back and look at that.
Back when you went to June,
And, that's only good for a house rate.
that now was.
So it's parents, 2 kids, all right? One person's salary,
One after
might
another.
have been a little tighter, but it worked.
They told me that. I don't
I don't think I'd go one way or the other.
Comes along, kind of made.
Happened there, young fella?
I'm doing all right, how are you?
You get thrown a beard to get warm or?
No, I started growing it the day I retired, at the request of. Retired December 31st.
Good for you. So you don't wanna see your ugly face anymore, so grow a beard, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it. Here, this is my girl, Elaine.
Hi, Elaine. Nice to meet
You got change?
So one of these issues, these things that I saw, that I went back trying to find it.
Put it this way.
Website.
When I,
And
whatever my folks are saying, but I actually
Trying it?
tried.
I think you meant for it comes back. You kept all right.
Yeah.
35. Now you got it.
So I actually saved the whole, finished the whole.
I got your third.
Before I did this.
There's 70. So 70 altogether. Probably. Yeah, I'll
I'm gonna go back to try to
give me
some of this.
give me the 70, I'll give you the.
Smooth this out. I ended up using a lot of systems.
Cool.
Yeah.
All set. Thank you.
It's the whole thing was.
I'll mark it down then.
Oh,
Don't worry.
I know.
So in that case, I started looking, so,
Yeah.
I found
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah, I saw pictures, but not smoke, it's the top.
real fast, real sharp.
Yeah, I didn't see these, that came out nice.
So what is this? It's a regular. Oh, yeah. And they're also balanced. Not just
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna do.
Took like 40 hours.
What's up, look familiar?
There's that other piece of butter not in there too.
Yeah,
There were 3 more.
We'll leave the butternut out there, I'll throw it in my car.
yeah, I threw one in
Oh, you did?
already.
Oh, okay.
There's another piece, you can bring it in if you want, yeah.
I'll grab that close to the hash too, please.
My issue was, trying to tear up, so like, well, I'll take the edge. Yeah, right.
Where's the
On one side. Yeah, right at the edge.
Then put the carbon on hold.
But that was a good exercise. I tried making a cherry top of it.
Yeah.
So it's been about 3 months. Finding, getting around. And so that, you got, nasty cold, CBD.
Yeah.
That,
We keep breathing.
we can't. We go to breakfast every Saturday morning. He's got a sheep. Inhale this thing, inhale this thing. So I have.
My sister has two types.
Yeah, one for fast action, one for when he's feeling. He's a little tired, cranky, but he's not, he's still.
When,
That stuff though.
You got your first color TV.
We're going to his house tomorrow.
Finished.
I've done a couple of pieces of cherry.
How expensive was it?
Gigantic cherry tree fell down in his backyard.
Beautiful.
His backyard was dangerous to the neighbors. I don't think we're flying.
And now.
Oh, okay. Three, yeah.
So now we want to do some boards.
Yeah, so what is,
You know, it's the segment.
why
So I bought the cottage a long time ago.
I've never been able to identify a lot.
Tomorrow, we'll cut.
Therefore.
Trees,
So let's go back. If you were to compare it, this is very different.
well, that's,
Set up
First time.
3/4 inch cotter plates.
Okay, I know what you got.
Just like.
yeah,
Yeah. I bring coffee, donuts, you said.
that's
They're 10.
This tree, that's just a limb off the tree.
Have it out of commission.
Absolutely.
It's probably recycling.
But hand side, the water would be rotted.
Look at my kids, so much. I learned to check my guys.
Oh, really?
Try
Try it. I might have some pieces. You like it? Go for it. I get a lot of people cutting trees down. Nobody put it in.
Yeah, so.
So do you want more of that stuff?
Oh, I'm good. I actually just recently finally found my tree guy. So I still gotta take that truck full of
Wait, you guys
stuff.
garden it?
I don't have any cash though, so. Much
It took like a few hours. Carb and then I could sit that carb.
I'm doing demos. So
I know.
you can have the same.
Bubble bubble. I got a few bubbles. There was air.
I know that's
There's also air under
I've been doing some with, especially with fresh wood that cracks. And I kind of, I did one. I did a, took some copper and here with some shades of green spray, finished with the copper, on the inside, just spray it. Yep, kind of like a, almost like a Velcro.
I still go down, I just don't know why, that's the way you live.
That's way better.
Yeah, it's close.
So, the laptop is on YouTube check it out. Yeah, okay. But Zoom will go right up. Zoom is on. The Zoom recording will go right up. Yeah, I don't have to move. No, okay. How we doing, guys? It's open seating. Any way you want to sit, it's a good place as any.
Some other cord, like stuff that was, natural light. Like
The AA meeting doesn't start till 7.
Oh, good.
Did you drink some?
Braided copper wire. Smashed it flat.
I'm ready. We'll do the introduction when we get the meeting.
How do you guys find us?
I don't know, I've been trying to come to these meetings for months. Someone come up and,
We had a great demo.
And I met this gentleman at big conversation with him at the last show, and I'm a voter.
So talk about you with John.
John, I said, John, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's also, well, he's the president of Woodworkers Guild of Rhode Island, which also meets here.
Yep.
First Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
They're all flying. I'm starting to take these guys out. Yeah. Yeah. I was down with you, but I only did.
I did for a while, and then I only did one that started dealing with it.
Yeah.
It had so much extra, and like, if you mess it up,
You know,
it's hard
Rick
to recover
Susan?
from it, you know.
He was a Turner in
He was in that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick and I worked together for years. We're in both.
Okay, I was with Stephen Clark.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yep.
Wayne, he used to help me with my business.
After you mixed it, how long did you let it sit for?
I still see Stephen in the market, once in a while, him and his wife.
Yeah.
So it depends on, like, is it
Still
was it a deep or a table shop?
It's 3 eggs.
Hey, very well, how are you? Good.
So in the tabletop, yes.
That's 40 minutes.
Yeah, I would probably.
What is?
I can't say that's not true. I know. Degas the epoxy and
Yeah, no, they're so useful. And you put it.
Pretty quick. So if anyone ever says it's something that is not. Because like
What's happening?
How you doing?
Yeah.
I got my big boy in.
Did you?
I got the 16.
Yeah, this, I don't like the motor on this. I like the lid, I like everything about it. The motor's underpowered.
Yeah.
So what does that have? That has a 2 horse?
It has a 2 horse and I want a 220.
Yeah, you'll love that.
I mean, it's gonna step up to the Harbor Freight one, so it's like.
You know, from Harbor Freight to that? Oh, wow.
Yeah, big jump. I mean, it's a basement shop, so I don't really like taking tools in and out if I don't have to. But I came into some money. I hit big in some stuff last year, so free money.
Roll that over one more game.
Yeah, yeah. So now I gotta upgrade my chest. Acme tools.
Oh, okay, you ordered it online to get it right to you.
Yep. Yeah. 2-3 weeks. It took.
Really?
Yeah, wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Now I gotta upgrade my chuck. I have the Credit Nova I've got a Nova, but that's got the 1 inch instead of the 1 1/4.
Yeah,
Threads. So I got
Isn't is that a threaded insert or direct?
No, direct.
Okay.
So I bought an adapter, so I'm limping by with it now, but obviously it sticks out. It's not ideal, but I'm thinking I'm gonna sell my Harbor Freight as well as like I've been buying over time. I've been getting some Thompson tools, so I've got a 5/8 bowl. I've got a Benjamin's Bears 1/2 inch bowl. Just for Christmas, got a 1 inch or 1 1/4 SKU from Thompson. So I'm building up the good tools. So I'm going to sell the Harbor Freight chisels with the blade as well. So I'm kind of going to sell it as a whole kit. So I think I'll have a few hundred. And I was
Look at
looking at
the one way, either one.
I was looking at the
Talon
Vidmark
or the
120. I was looking at the Vidmark 120.
That's a nice one. So is the Talon.
Okay.
Talon and Stronghold. What's the Vidmark price like? A couple hundred? Three?
Yeah, I think all said and done with
So-
the standard jaws, it was great.
So the Talon is a little less than that. It's about 190, I think.
Okay.
The Stronghold's about 3 and change.
What's the difference? Both of those are one way?
Both of those are one way.
What's the difference between the two?
Just the chuck body, the beef of it.
Yep.
I turn, so I've got the 20-inch blade, and I use primarily, I'll use the Talon, which is the smallest one way, with great success. I put 3-inch jaws. Some with 2 and 3/8, I think. I upgraded to the next size up, so I make my tenants a good 3 3/4, because I'm turning,
Large size stuff.
yeah, and I have no problem with that. And I think it's 180, it might be 200. It's the smaller one. I swear by it. But I know a lot of the other guys swear by the Stronghold.
Yeah.
The name itself says,
Yeah.
but the Vidmark is a really nice,
Yeah, it was, from what I was reading, it sounded like the Vidmark had more available jaw sets.
They do have a lot of different style jaws that I actually like.
Honestly, for the most part, I wouldn't turn.
I don't have them.
I wouldn't.
The one I saw that, well, it's not even the jaw, they've got the ring for the bowls, so you can put it on as your faceplate.
It's got a user faceplate.
But yeah, I don't know, we'll see how much I get for my whole blade, and maybe that'll drive it.
That I was at,
It's hard to turn with traditional tools.
and the new Bauer that is 6 and change.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't.
They went to the
All
Bauer,
right, I haven't seen that.
and it's the same.
Oh, the epoxy.
But it's variable speed.
Yeah.
And it's 6 and change, it's way up, because that was, what'd you get it for, $2.99
Yeah.
coupon?
Yeah.
So it went way up.
Hello, are those three things you?
Are you crazy? I can't do that. No, I can't do that. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where, no, I can turn it. I can't get it finished.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying for 2 years now.
The ones, I'm thinking that's resin, no?
That's it, yeah, it's resin.
Oh, okay.
Yep, yeah, those are rollers. All right, I can steer the camera.
Okay.
Well, welcome to our March meeting of Ocean Wood Turners. I'm John, I'm the president. We have, any old business? I don't think so.
Got shirts, lots of shirts,
There are lots of shirts. So if you want an Ocean Wood Turner shirt,
long sleeve or short sleeve.
go see him. And, we will get you a shirt. How much should they cost?
It's 35 for the short sleeve shirts and 40 for the long sleeve shirts.
Okay, so CP.
500 for a tailored jacket.
Exactly, now we're talking.
Any new business? You mentioned, I saw something mentioned in the newsletter, some store. Maybe not.
No, so the newsletter was the, are you going, Roland? Where's the meeting next, the end of the month? Totally Turning,
Totally turning.
Totally Turning, are you going?
Saratoga.
My
Saratoga.
intention is to go.
Yeah.
It's a late.
No, Saratoga,
Last minute
that's,
choice.
if anybody likes, Saratoga, New York, which is lovely, they put on a hell of a 2-day show, right?
2-day show.
2-day show out there, really worth the trip if you get vacation time or whatever. But yeah, the other thing new, and I'm actually doing it tonight, I'm trying to work our way out of the Zoom and into YouTube Live. So I haven't figured out all the details, but I am on YouTube Live right now getting it done, so
Cool.
watch for the transition if you're not coming to a meeting. If you don't come to the meeting, you can always watch it on meeting night on either YouTube or Zoom.
Is
So you
there
don't necessarily have
a
to be
link
there.
on our webpage for?
I just said I haven't figured out all
No,
the
no, no,
details.
no. Nick should be able to find our YouTube page.
Yeah,
and
no,
put a link on,
I don't know if I'm into that or not, but
but there's
I'm on
other stuff there
somewhere.
for YouTube.
Somebody's staring at me. I don't know. Well, I don't know if anybody's on actually. I don't know how to get to that. That's a different, one problem at a time. I just want to see if it would work.
Are you guys new?
Yeah.
Hi, what's your names?
I'm Jim Murphy
Hi.
from Warren
Okay,
and Jim Kerr from Tiverton.
cool, well, welcome. The way we do things here, we, just go over the same business that we always go over, such as, right now we have 1,200 in checking, we have 5,100 in our CD, which is similar to last time. We have 5 lifetime members, 18 paid members.
Oh.
So,
Update, we're up to 21.
21, here we go. So if you haven't paid your yearly dues and you want to be a member, CP, and he will take care of you. You get your membership discount card, you get your member card, you can use that card at,
Reader Hardwood.
Yeah.
all sorts of
Yeah.
places.
There's Readers, Penn State, Walpole, Woodcraft.
We are a chapter of the American Association of Wood Turners, so that's our parent group. So we go over things like that, this normal business. And then after business, we say hello to the new people, and then we do show and tell. After the show and tell, we'll have a demo. So Nick is doing a demo this year, this month, and he's gonna be going over his methods for making really fine thin turnings. So that should be a good demo. And then we go home. So,
And then just a note too, that we're still looking for a permanent secretary. And if anybody does know how to do this camera bull crap, we're looking for somebody to figure that out too.
so that's business. So who wants to do show and tell? Who wants to start? All right, you go.
So I've got a few pieces that I haven't finished just yet because they were spray you in the face green when I started turning them, but I just recently got a set of nice actual real Halloween tools and stabilizers, so I kind of started going to town on some of these. I think both of these are maple, but this is a crotch piece that now that it's drying, it's starting to show some real nice figure, but it's rough turn because I haven't sanded it at all yet, so I'm not going to turn it back down to shape, but it does need to be sanded and finished, so that's number one in that size piece. And then this one is probably the best hollowing that I've done yet, just in terms of like wall consistency and everything. This came from the same branch as that one, but just nice kind of round. It's sort of warping a little bit in a way without really cracking too much. This thing's really cool. So this one still needs to be finished as well. It's like rough sanded on the outside, so a little bit better than that guy, but still not finished just yet. And once I find spare time, which is rare for me, I'll get these finished up, and maybe I'll bring them back when we're all done.
Now, is there pith in the center of those, or are those like only half the branch to avoid the pith?
This one definitely has pith, so on either side of these, but I liked it. I kept it because I saw the ambrosia all the way through it, so I was like, we'll risk the pith. This one, I cut a bit more strategically, although it was a crotch piece, so like, it has sort of pith, but I don't know if there's a more term for not really pith, but still kind of pith. So you can see it there, but that's almost pith. Yeah, so that didn't really affect anything. But this one, the bigger one, more pith. You know, it's hard to see just looking at it from here. But if you sit there and turn it, it was round, and now it's not.
So I was working on getting some stuff for the classroom, and I wanted to turn these, so I actually did. But Penn State, and we do get a 10% discount on their. I was dying to try these wooden. They're just brass mallets, real simple to do. $15. You get a head and the bolt. Real simple to do. They also make a ball peen hammer as well if you're a mechanic type guy, but for woodworking and hammering chisels and whatnot. Fun project. But Penn State, as John mentioned, if you sign up, we do get a 10% club discount on those. So, and there's a couple of catalogs here if anybody's interested.
Those are surprisingly heavy too.
They are, right? The hammers, really.
Oh, I picked one up and I was like, Rick's making weapons now.
Yeah, well, hey, you want to give that chisel a little love tap?
Couple of years ago, my folks, dad was alive at the time, had a huge maple tree that they thought they'd have to take completely down because it was a lot of rot. And the arborist came in and said, no, but we just need to trim it. And so my dad saved some wood for me. They weren't all necessarily large sizes. So just finally got to a couple of pieces. And I call it Hopkins maple because they're going to be gifts for friends and family that, knew my mom and dad, so that they have something to remember them by. And this is just try at some ambrosia maple, trying to turn a different size bowl, different shape. Had some cracks along the way, and thank goodness for CA glue. And then for Christmas, I thought I would try something different. And my girlfriend Elaine is a baker, loves baking cakes, and so I made a cake stand for her for Christmas. And
Is that one piece?
No, it's actually 3 pieces. It's cherry. I actually picked up a slab from Borden Millworks, or I think it's Millworks in Middletown. I could have done it with something a little thinner, but my first time I wanted to have extra material to work with. And then
Where's the cake?
And I don't know, it was about 6 months or so ago, in one of the wood turning magazines, I had seen a heart-shaped vase. Well, I was looking all over for it online, the plans on how to do it, because I didn't grab that magazine. And finally, I gave up and I started, because I couldn't remember if it was that magazine. And I went to that magazine, found the back issues, and found how to make a heart-shaped vase.
Wow.
So you're doing next month's demo?
Yeah. It was a challenge because you turn it, the cylinder, you drill the hole, then you turn it 90 degrees off center, and then you turn this. Then when you've got the basic shape, you have to turn a post that fits in here to turn this shape.
And is that hollow all the way through or
No,
not?
it's just a bud vase. I don't have a.
Give it a nick, it'll be hollow before you know
I
it.
don't have a test tube, so it's just for artificial, but, this was a birthday present.
That's
for-
cool. That's very cool.
So, but it was a little nerve wracking with the, when it's off-centered doing this. This is the first, project where I've done considerable sanding off the lathe. And because it was chipping a little bit, it's like, okay, the shape's good enough, I'll have to finish it up on sanding.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a challenge, but it was fun.
Damn, some people settle for auto mechanics.
All right.
What was it? A couple of months ago, Rick did that nice demo on, what do you call this?
Wing
bowl, wing box. So it was a fun demo. I had a little problem with a little tear out, so I decided to taper the edges a little bit. It was nice. I tried a cherry top. This is cherry, and I like the black walnut better. Diamond. Not diamond, whatever. And this is again cherry. I have a lot of cherry on my property, so I end up with a lot. So it's Art Nouveau, which I kind of like the designs of Art Nouveau, and so this is heavily carved, obviously, wood burn. It's got dyes, alcohol dyes, acrylics, and whatever in the inside. I can't remember. No, I didn't coat the inside. So it's just a
Very nice.
very different.
Very nice.
Okay.
I heard we're doing thin stuff, so this is my thinnest piece. It's just pretty thin. And it's end grain too, so, that's a pith. If anybody wanna know what pith is, that's the pith right there. But if you do it green and do it really thin, it does big time tricks like that. I like that. And then these are the little tops I've been making. And that tabletop epoxy. And I started doing that because I was just doing wood, except when I started sanding it would check because it's just wood that's been hanging around forever. And I just started, I said, okay, I'm really getting sick of making the top and then watching it crack because then I got to fill it with CA glue and then it just looks like shit. If it's a top, and you don't want to give a kid a top held together with CA glue because it's going to break. So I said, oh, wait a minute, let me try doing this. And so I started doing it. And these are, because the epoxy is heavier than the wood itself. All the weight is right here, so when it spins really good. So whoever gets these are going to be lucky. And again, I just tried different colors, so 2 different colors. Pour one side here, pour one side there, so I can get. And I got, if you look at it, there's some little gold flakes inside of that, and it's also a metallic. So it's a translucent metallic tabletop epoxy that I'm doing with that. It's pretty cool.
What are the points made of on those?
That's bronze.
Okay,
But just so that way they'll never wear out. So whoever, like I said, the kid that gets these are going to be, they'll be in the family for a long time. And then this is that colored wood that you get from Maine. Well, I don't know if you get it from Maine. I know I get a lot of it from Maine. So it makes good bottle stoppers and stuff like that. But I can get,
Spectre plug.
Yeah.
yeah, Spectre plug. But I can get 2 of them out of bottle stopper, which is, I don't know, they might be 2 inches long, inch and a half, but they're 1.5 inches. And I don't know, this is a little too small, but it's too small for me, but a little kid, it's still pretty big. It's kind of like old, like 10 years when you're little is old. So, and then this is a piece of box elder burl. And I just started to play with this again. This is tabletop epoxy. It's a translucent. It's metallic, so in the light you get a little flex, which is really pretty. And I just started teaching myself how to do this. And I'm getting it, so I don't have any air bubbles at all. And then this is a really, that was a really punky piece of maple. It was really nasty. They turn, it's been sitting around forever in my shop. And because I've been sick, I couldn't do any turning, so let me try and do this. And I really like that look. Because you got that water, it almost looks like water looking through water. And that's, again, that tabletop epoxy.
So how are you applying that epoxy? Are you brushing it on or?
No, it's on the, it's rotisserie. But then I don't understand why, but if you use a brush to put it on, the color goes away for some reason. I don't know why. So I actually have to pour it on, and then I use a heat gun to push it around. And then, I can use the brush, but I can just dab it with the brush. But as soon as I try, and I don't know why, the color goes away, but the color's a powder anyway. So maybe it gets jammed up in the brush. I don't know where it goes, but it doesn't stay where I want it. I know that. So again, it's been a learning process for me. But then I found out that when I put it on the tabletop is thick. So this is a regular total boat that I put on first. So it's super thin, so it soaks really good into the wood. And then I can sand that down so I have a nice platform to put the tabletop on. And so I'll pour some on, and then I'll use the heat gun. And I can actually move it around like so, and I can get like a Starry Night look. It's just really pretty that you can do with that stuff once you learn how to do it. But
Now, you're talking about moving it around, and you're also talking about different colors. So are you throwing different color epoxies on to start with, and then kind of like swirling them into one another?
no, that's what I tried to do here, but you can't do that. You put one color on. If I wanted to do that, like I'll put a dark color on, sand that back, and then I'll put a light color on that, and then move that light color around. So I can move the dark color around, and so like I got more dark here than here. And then when I sand that back and I put a light color over that, it's the same thing. So now I can just move it around again. But as soon as I put one color with the other color, then they become another color.
Oh, yeah.
And I never know what color that one's going to be.
So, but I think what you're telling me though is your coat of epoxy is shifted by the heat. It maybe shift towards the heat or against the heat.
Well, the heat liquefies it because tabletop is
Oh,
really
yeah.
thick. So now when this is spinning, like I'll have this much is epoxy, and there'll be a wave, so I can actually see that wave as it's spinning, and it stays just below the top here. And then I can just move it around, and then once I'm done with it, I just leave it, and then I can go back to it a couple hours later, and then hit it again with that heat gun, and that'll draw all the air out of it. So now I have no bubbles at all.
Ah,
And that's
okay.
after a couple hours, you can actually liquefy it all over again. Actually, this was a big glob here. For some reason, it globbed up big time. But a couple hours later, I went back with the heat gun, and I just was able to get that look to it. And I actually like that look. But that wasn't because of what I wanted. That's because a lot of shit happens because it's the way it happens. But I think that's a really pretty piece of live edge. Beautiful piece.
And actually, just one other question. You keep on talking about tabletop epoxy. How is that different from epoxy?
Tabletop epoxy is made just to go flat.
Okay.
You can't use tabletop. You can't do this with tabletop because it all goes down.
Right.
Viscosity, a lot of it.
Oh, okay. Bingo. Right.
So what I'll use is the regular epoxy, and then I can soak it. It just goes deep into the wood. And when I use the tabletop, and then plus tabletop is food safe. It makes food contact food safe.
Ah, okay.
Which is another. So when I tell it, some people say it's food safe because that's what it says when I buy it. So.
If it says so, it must be true. The market is never
I'm
lied.
getting old enough that it won't matter. Four Revolution.
That's everybody, right?
It's a rotisserie motor that I use.
I think so.
Sometimes we take a break, but it's only been like 20 minutes. Nick's ready to go. So if you want to just.
Unless anyone wants a break,
Did anybody want a break for a 5-minute break? Yeah. All right. This is Nick, everybody.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. This feels like the wrong meeting though. That's a bad joke. All right, so we're gonna talk.
I got that.
So I like to do really thin stuff. The trick to these is not necessarily what to do, but more what not to do. I like to call these Icarus bowls, because if you know the story of Icarus, he flew too close to the sun, and instead of falling out of the sky, you'll just wind up with scrap on the floor. So I've done like a bit of a progression of these kind of over time. This is the first one that I did June 23, I guess. So kind of like really early into when I started doing wood turning, and like honestly, this was just like a happy accident that it happened to go this thin. I was just like feeling a certain way one day, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna push how far I can go. And I'll pass these around so you can see them. And one of the mistakes is on this bowl. One of the mistakes I'm gonna tell you not to make. And if anyone can point it out before I get there, you know, I'd say you win a prize, but I don't have anything to give you. This one I brought in before. I'll pass this one around too, but please be careful because if you look through the bottom, this one almost fell to the ground. And then these I did a few weeks ago as practice when I was getting ready to do this. Unfortunately, I wound up very sick last month. Totally fine. I just got like what I think was the flu, but I'm vaccinated, so it wasn't like that bad, but bad enough where I wasn't going to, one, come in and get anyone else sick, but two, also not stand in front of a giant spinning piece of wood with a sharp tool in my hand. So I turn these up. I think this one's cherry, and we could go a little thinner than this. This one's is a zebra wood. None of these are finished. They're just sanded down. And then this last one, it was not. It was pretty green. It's a piece of walnut, so you can see what happens to those. Doing a few little tricks, as Roland likes to say. So that one, you can certainly do these green, like we saw with Roland's piece. I definitely recommend when you start out trying to do these that you use dry wood, just because one of the things you really have to deal with when you're going that thin is the wood flexing on you. And if you're not used to that flexing or green wood at all, that could just kind of lead to, mistakes pretty quickly. So I guess that being said, so the first thing, so I already turned these down into rounds, because we've all probably turned balls before, and you guys don't need to see me turn the outside of the ball, and we can just get right to the interesting part of this. The important part about after turning the outside of the bowl for this, some people have their preferences as to how they sand and when they sand. I would say that for this purpose, I would always sand the outside to be pretty smooth, because as part of all this, you will need to be touching the outside of wood, because like I mentioned, the flexing stuff. So if it's not super smooth and it's rough, you're gonna get splinters and it's not gonna be fun for anyone. So sand the outside of these to start with. There's not a magnet there like there is on mine.
No.
I knew I was gonna do that. I was like, don't try and stick it there, it's gonna hit the ground. I did it anyway. Cool. So to do these, like I said, sand the outside. Did anyone spot the first mistake on the first one that I passed around?
I did see a minor gouge into it, but I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Nah, not that kind of mistake.
Okay.
Any other kind of mistake that, if you're turning super thin, you might want to avoid. All right, so don't use a mortise for this. And in fact, one of the first things that you want to try and do, and I didn't pass this around so you won't be able to see it, but there's a foot on the bowl. There's a foot and there's a tenon. I generally prefer tenons anyway. Mortises are not my cup of tea. I just think they look, I just don't like the way they look. But also, when you're going super thin, when you have the chuck inside of the mortise, you just don't have as much real estate to work with. So if you have a tenon that's also on a foot, you're less likely to go through. You've got more room to play with. But the bigger thing there as well is when you're going super thin, they become super light. So if you have a foot on the bottom of it, it gives a little bit more weight where it can actually just kind of sit on the table appropriately. And wood feet are nice because it raises things up a little bit and it gives it more of just kind of like a bit of an elevated look there. Cool, you're still staying true. So I use 3 tools when I do this. Technically 4. I use a spindle gouge to do the tenon just to get it to fit in the chuck the right way, but you don't need to do that. It's just my personal preference. I have a 3/4 I think it's a 3/4 bowl gouge. This one's a robust. I got this because I got one of those gift certificates at the Christmas party. This thing is honestly freaking sweet. Holds a hell of an edge, and they're worth the price. They're made really, really well. I definitely recommend them. So that's one of the bigger bowl gouges, and that's just really for really roughing stuff out. And then I've got a 3/8, which this one is getting close to the end of its life. This is the first one that I bought when I bought my first set of real high-speed steel tools. And then the round nose scraper. You don't need this. However, when I finish these, it's really, really nice to get the inside finish and not even to just remove tool marks. You can get a lot of like kind of fine control out of this as opposed to using any other kind of gouge, just in my opinion. You don't need one of these. I know a lot of people this is like some people's second least favorite tool right behind the skew. There's definitely a learning curve to the scrapers a little bit. Just like a skew, just like any tool really, but if you get a bad catch on a scraper, I've broken one of these before, and luckily Sorby was nice enough to send me a new one because I complained. It totally wasn't my fault.
You broke it right at the tang?
Yeah.
That's a hell of a catch.
It wasn't even that bad of a catch.
Really?
No, really. Like I've had catches. That was not that bad, but it caught, and then I heard a ding, and I felt the weight not in my hand anymore, and yeah, it just gave up one day. But if you don't want to use I'll take that. Thank you. If you don't want to use the scraper, one, I can't really say I blame you. Two, don't be afraid of the 120 grit gouge. It is definitely your friend. Sandpaper's totally fine. You're fine. Okay.
Yeah, that'll come off. That's only hand screwed. Yeah.
Oh, so this one's not like mine, where that one is just.
Oh, yeah, no, I just dropped them in there just for
Permanently in there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So first thing I do with these, just get whatever's a comfortable position for you. So the first big thing not to do when you're turning one of these, I see a lot of people do it. There's a lot of good reasons to do it, but don't use a pull cut on these on the inside of a bowl. Personally, don't really think you should do pull cuts on the inside of a bowl anyway. Maybe that's just me. But when you're going super thin, the closer you get to the edge, the more likely you are to go through the side. So just don't do that. The next thing, and I'll show you guys this when I turn this on in a second. Instead of kind of doing the big scooping cuts where you're just hogging out a lot of material at a time, what we're going to do to kind of build up, one, a nice cut, because we kind of have to go for as close to a finishing cut as we can on the inside as we're going through it. But we're going to, and I don't know how well you guys will be able to see this, but I can probably just pop this one off when we get to that point, and I'll show you. But we kind of like start cutting waves into it almost. And what that gives you is a nice place as you're going into your like next level of cut to rest the tool on so you can get a nice smooth cut. And then as you go all the way through, you start the next layer and you kind of go down and down and down until you get to the bottom where we rip out the smaller tool that has a bit of a less steep angle. And then we can move on to the scraper. Speed is also your friend here. And since this is like just a really, really teeny tiny piece, you kind of go for it. There's still too much. All right. So first cut. Also, one thing that's worth noting that I should have mentioned. When I start these, so I've got in the front of all these, there's a hole in the front. That's just from the worm screw. A lot of people don't use those, but they can be super, super helpful, especially on a shallower piece. Because something that you can do, especially with tailstock support, is you can get a piece of like craft, like laser cutting wood or something like that, like the really thin stuff from the craft store, and super glue a few pieces together, drill a hole through it. And now instead of having to go, that far into the wood with the worm screw, you only have to go that far. And with the tailstock support, you can still kind of get a good grip on it, make sure it's not going anywhere. And then I also like it because you get a good point of center reference. So if you shove your live center on the end of it and it goes right into the end of it, it's still the middle. As long as your lathe is properly lined up too.
Sure they all are.
Listen, imperfection is beautiful, right? All right. So a lot of times, if I was just turning a regular size hole, well, by regular size, I mean, you know, reasonably thick walls that make much larger cuts to start. And I don't know if you guys can see this from where you are, but I kind of just carved in a few ridges from here. And so now what we can do, I feel like I'm like shouting when I have this thing on. Now as we go through for the next cut, we've got a ridge here, which is basically the front of the wood, but we have a place to rest the tool right on. So we're getting a bevel cut right away. And the same for the next one, same for the next one, same for the next one. And then as we kind of start to turn in here, you're gonna have to get out of the way, please. As we start going in here, we get a steeper and steeper angle. To get that thinness, we have support the whole way along there. Oh, that's right. You know, I just couldn't throw it out of it. You know, I brought my center because I thought I might need it, and then I realized that I definitely don't need it for what I'm doing. So okay.
How come you don't have it on the TV anymore?
Because I'm on YouTube. I could probably set it up on the TV if you want. Take me a second.
Because whatever he's doing, most of us.
But
You're the only one that can really see.
you're just gonna have to believe me on this. So as he's getting that rigged up, one thing to kind of make note on. So as you're going through and making these kind of like, we'll call them waves, because if you once you get to see it, you'll kind of see it looks like ripples, and like you drop a rock in water, it kind of looks like ripples going out. You'll kind of do less and less as you go down because you're kind of removing wood in a bit of a smoother fashion as you kind of get deeper and deeper into more of a concave. I'll get this. Let me get out of the way here.
I'm just about done.
So while we're waiting, okay, you make these waves. Now then are you going in and cutting into the side of the wave?
I'll show you what I mean. It'll be a lot easier once that camera's up there because you'll be able to see what's going on. Yeah.
I think you could use the term steps.
Yeah.
I don't know what that meant. But my terminology would be you step it down. And so that way each step is a finished. So that first step, that's all done because it's going to walk, it's going to do tricks.
Yep.
And then because the next step is there, that's giving you support for that first step. And then you get rid of the next step and then you always got support.
Yep.
You always want support when you're doing thin stuff. Otherwise it gets wonky and it's not going to come out the way you want.
Absolutely.
You know, everyone's a critic, but I'm gonna say that screen still is not very useful to a large part of the room. Could you hook it up to both screens at once?
I think you just gotta volunteer to do AV.
God help you if you need to rely on my technical knowledge.
Unfortunately, I can't do both. The splitter is missing.
Okay.
I don't know where it is. But what I can do, get this out of the way a little bit. This.
There we go.
Zoom, so it's not gonna show the pretty face, but it'll show what he's doing. How's that? How's that? Does that help?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Little better.
Can you full screen that stream?
Yeah, sure. There's a word for that.
you maybe you can't from the.
Yeah, I'm
studio.
trying to find the button that would do that.
Let's just share. I don't know if you'd be able to from here, but I can really scoop this out of the way so you can see. So yeah, like rolling is definitely a better term. I called them waves, but steps is definitely more accurate there. So we've got these kind of these steps here, and then and I would never turn from here, but just for the rest, as you're going into it, when you make this cut and you're going to cut out the centerpiece, you have a place just to rest the bevel right away, and again on the next one, and again on the next one. Does that help to explain it a little bit more?
I guess, yeah, so basically you can bevel what I'm thinking of as the top of the step.
Right. So every kind of each one of these steps goes inward a bit. So you're working towards the center of the bowl on each one. But as you're going, you have that ability to get in there and get a nice curve and a nice clean cut because it's supported there. So as we go in on each one, you can easily just rub the bevel right away. We're sitting there, we're just riding that bevel already. And now, when we get to this point, so I haven't really touched the thickness of the rim too much yet, because you need to get a little bit of stuff out of the way so you can actually really get it. Because when it's flat like this, you're not going to start coming in from the edge right away. But now we've got a little bit of room to play with, and we can actually get in there and start creating some steps on the edge, which is going to help get our thickness here down a bit. And then I also realized I didn't clean up the edge here, so we'll do that real quick. There we go. So now on the edge here, you want to start working this in gradually. You don't want to be too aggressive right off the bat, because otherwise you're going to ruin your edge, and your bowl's hopefully just going to be smaller instead of on the ground. And usually for the first one, you've got to kind of make a few passes on this to really get where you're going. And now, at this point, this is still thicker than where we want to be. It's still significantly thicker than we ultimately want to be. But what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to take that back down with the scraper as we get down to there. All right, so once I get down to about this point here, we're kind of starting to get not totally towards the bottom, but not super far away from it. And at this point, this gouge is just a little too big to fit into there comfortably. And then you definitely, could you do it? Yeah, probably. Are you risking a bad cut? Also, probably. So we'll just switch to a smaller gouge. Nobody look at this one because I definitely didn't have a sharpening accident at one point when I was trying to figure it out and get a catch on the grinder and shove it right into it and break the whole thing off, but we don't worry about that. It's fine. these go quick. So once you kind of get to the bottom and you start bringing in the smaller tool, you can see we pretty much already got the final shape of where we're going. We're just not at the final thinness yet. So the bottom of this is still quite thick. Don't forget we put a foot in there for a bit of weight and a bit more of real estate and room for this to be a bit more forgiving. So we could probably go a little bit shallower here. And then we can also clean up some of these other ridges that are in here at the moment. Cool. So we like that a bit more. It's got a nice shape to it, and with something this small, you can definitely just feel how much room you got to play with, and there's still definitely a little bit kind of more space there that we can go through. But for the sake of not showing you what the Icarus part of this looks like, we'll stop there. And now we can move on to this part of things. So typically when you're at a lathe and you're holding a tool, you've got one hand towards the end of it or wherever you like to choke up. I usually like to hold the end. I feel like I've got a bit more fine grained control. But then you're kind of holding it down in one way or another, whether you're overhand or underhand. I'm more of a gorilla, so I like to just hold it like this. However, at the point with this scraper here, we need a little bit more finer control. And the trick with a scraper is you're trying to hold it kind of at a consistent angle for the bottom. And then for the sides, things can get really hairy. And what you really should do is tilt it up at the same time. And you're getting more of a shear cut here. But the trick is when you're doing something this thin, you need a lot more finer control. As much as you get some fine control through the end of this, and maybe even a bit up here, the easiest way to do this for this part is to actually just really, really choke up on the scraper. And this is also why we sand the outside of the bowl here, because what we now have to do is we're going to choke up on this pretty high and get this in here. But at this point, we also have to support the outside of this. And we're going to raise that tool rest up just a little bit. And so something about this part is this becomes a bit more of a dynamic movement than you would have with a bowl gouge. Usually with a bowl gouge, you're making kind of like sweeping cuts inside of it. But this, you're going to start flat and you're going to start kind of rolling it and supporting it in the kind of more you get towards the edge, we're going to roll that tool up onto its side and you'll start to hear it. You'll start to hear how it's cutting. But we want to do really, really fine cuts here because we're getting to the point where we push a little bit too hard. It's going to go bye-bye. So it's important to note too, so for the same reason that I said, make sure you sand the outside of this because you're already holding it. You also don't have to push super hard on this because one, it gets really hot. And two, we're trying to support it and you don't want to push it in. We're trying to prevent it from pushing out, but you also don't want to push it in. With dry wood, it's a bit easier because you're not going to flex nearly as much. But if you were doing this with green wood, you definitely have to be really careful about how much you're pushing on either side of things. And then you can also hear, so this is actually a pretty good project to learn how to use a round nose scraper on because you get a lot of feedback from it. It makes a lot of different noises. If you're using it wrong, it will tell you. It will very, very quickly tell you that it's chattering. And if you hit the edge and it starts chattering or it starts cutting really, really hard, you probably need to dip your angle or roll it a little bit more or back off on the pressure. Or it's a good project, especially if you have scrap wood. Like honestly, you could do this with like a 4x4 from Lowe's. I wouldn't recommend that because that stuff sucks to turn. But if you don't want to waste like your good wood, go for it. You get a lot of feedback at this point. So this part, you can see I'm a little out of practice because my company we're sponsoring a conference in a few months, and I decided instead of turning 100 pens this year because I thought that was a nightmare, that I was going to turn 100 bottle openers again, and that's still a nightmare. So I've just been doing a lot of spindle turning and not really using this at all. So we're still getting a little bit of tear out in here. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit. And the reason that this gets tedious is because you're sitting here and you're making a lot of very, very shallow, very short pass cuts. Because we really just don't want to blow through the side of this. It's really, really easy to do.
So, is there any point where I could use a, say, sandpaper?
Yeah, the 120 grit gouge. Yeah, and that's ultimately it's kind of a, or a 60 grit gouge depending on how much you got to do. Yeah, definitely. There will definitely be a point where if you're kind of new to this and you're starting to do it, where you'll start getting chattering, you'll start getting flexion, and all that fun stuff, and you'll say, I don't feel super good about this. That's probably the good time to grab the sandpaper. But there's no shame in that, right? It's just another tool. Yeah. Does that answer that?
Just curiosity. I understand that's a lot faster than sandpaper, but.
Oh yeah, the sandpaper will take absolutely forever, and you'll go through a ton of it. Also, just on semi-unrelated recommendation: spend the money on good sandpaper. You can buy the stuff off of Amazon from like whatever, somebody smashed on the keyboard kind of brand name that gets dropped shipped from China. Yeah, you can get 400 sheets of it for $15. Or you could get 20 sheets of the good stuff for like $30, except that's going to last you longer than the cheap stuff will. And you'll get better, more consistent cuts with it, just a better finish. So it does get easier with the better sandpaper, but yeah, it will still take forever and make a huge mess. But buy yourself some good sandpaper.
What is the good stuff?
I like, what is it called? I think it's called True Grit. It's green. It's like a lime green. It's worth every penny. Or no, sorry, Serious Grit, not True Grit. You can actually get it on Amazon, but it's not that, that crap. You can just get it on Amazon. But highly, highly recommended.
Wine is another really good bait.
Yeah.
Wine is great.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them out there, but if you go onto any of the kind of like, turning, like, don't get it off of Woodcraft either, because sometimes you can find some good stuff, but they have a lot of crap too. But if you get something off of like Craft Supplies USA or something like that, Wood Turners catalog, they've got some of the good stuff. It doesn't really matter which brand you get. There's definitely just another level of like quality of sandpaper. It's worth every single penny. I was always kind of against it because I was like, yeah, I can get like 400 pieces of this cheap stuff, and why would I do that? Do it. All right.
Have you ever used do you use just the standard scraper, or have you used negative rake?
I don't have a negative rake purely because I look at it and I'm like, I don't want to sharpen that. And, no other reason besides that. You probably could use a negative rake scraper and get a better result. Honestly, I just don't have one because I've never really. I don't know. I just don't have one. Not a better answer for it than that.
Okay.
I do have a negative rake. God, I can't. Negative rake scraper is really hard for me to say. I've also been spent 8 hours on the phone for the past 2 days in a row, so I can't really talk right now. I do have one for my hollowing tools for like an interior finisher. It works really, really well, and I think I'm like slowly being convinced to actually buy one of the smaller ones. But yeah, no other reason. I just don't have one. So we'll do a few more passes here, and then we'll probably call this one all set because I have a few other shapes that I kind of want to show you guys as well. They all do get a bit different. We're still not in the good right here.
If you lift that handle up like so and keep that cutting edge on center, you got a negative scraper without having to cut it to be a negative scraper.
Yeah, there we go.
So with the scraper, are you actually trying to get thinner or are you just trying to clean it up?
Yeah, so you can,
A little
it's kind of
or a
like
little
working
above.
it down a bit thinner, because at this point, if you try and take a gouge to this, you have to go equally as delicately. But there's also a little bit more room, just in my experimentation, could just be a technique issue for me, but so it is kind of like working down the thinness, and you can see how thin some of these get, but they also, they can just crumble into dust by the time you get there. So this is kind of like the tedious part of things. And at this point, for the sake of the demo, like I would usually go a bit thinner than this, but this is still, it's like 4 mil thick, which is pretty decent. The thinnest one I've done has gotten down to like 1.5 mil, and that one started getting a little scary. And this one definitely needs to be cleaned up with a bit of sandpaper. You can see some of the chattering from my lack of recent practice with the scraper, but for just a few minutes, with talking in between, that's not bad. I think that's typically thinner than a lot of people try to go. I can't see through it yet.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, you can? Yep. All right, that means you did it right. So
Barely, but you can.
Do you ever use a light?
yeah, so I've got
Determine the thickness?
I do, yeah. I've got a few goosenecks that I keep magnet. You can get like I think they call them like sewing machine lights. They're like $25 or something, but they just got a really strong magnet. You can just stick right to the end of it, and you stick the gooseneck kind of right up against the end of it. I haven't had a ton of success doing that with dry wood, especially when it's darker dry wood. Because by the time you can see light through darker dry wood, it's not seeing through the wood. It would be seeing through the wood, I guess.
Literally.
A bit more literal in that sense, yeah. But for the green stuff that I've been doing lately, the light, like, a centimeter away from it is an absolute game changer. Because then you don't necessarily need a set of calipers for most of it, because you can see where the darker ridges are, and then kind of know, you just have a visual guide on where to go, rather than, because as much as calipers are like one of the most useful tools for that sort of thing, it's also kind of a pain in the ass to stop, rub it, ruin the finish on the outside of it if you hit it too hard. So the lights are great. Unfortunately, this one is a little bit too far away to really make use of that. All right. So when you have a different shape, that one's pretty open and pretty shallow. You can definitely still do this on deeper ones. You're just going to need to kind of do some of the larger sweeping cuts to begin with. And then it's still going to be the same technique with the scraper. It's just a bit more of a exaggerated kind of movement throughout it.
Now, when you use the scraper, do you turn it on its side at all?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if you were able to really see that from this view, but in the center, I'll pull this back a little bit so maybe you can see it. So in the center, keeping it pretty flat, and usually what I like to do to find where it's going to cut is kind of like start raising up a little bit. So, center, and then once you get to the sidewall, is kind of when you start rolling it up to the side and then dropping the handle a bit. and you get a much more sheer cut on the
Yeah,
outside.
some of us, Bob, Roland, myself, were taught by a guy by the name of Rick Souza.
Yeah.
And he would turn it on its edge,
Mhm.
and if you were using more than 1/8 of an inch of the scraper,
Mhm.
you're using too much.
Too much of it.
That's where the chattering all comes from.
Mhm.
And Rick was phenomenal. I'm sure Roland will tell you, he'll tell you. I mean, Rick made them so thin that you could push them in and out with your fingers.
Oh man.
And he was well known for it the whole bit. The tip of tilting down that Roland gave you
Mhm.
is exactly what he did.
Mhm.
That tilt gave you that start, and then we just slightly would turn it to its side and bring it up and out. And he would make when he was teaching me, he put a magic marker mark on the tool
Yeah.
to say that's where you're cutting, and that's how I learned to do exactly what you're doing.
Hell yeah. Oh, cool. I should try that. I would love to. I wish I had a bit more formal kind of training in this. So this is all stuff that's like done by YouTube and breaking a lot of really nice wood in my shop.
Roland,
Yeah.
Bob, I don't know how many other guys remember, not many remember of this group, but there were several of us that learned from him.
Yeah.
And he was actually quite good.
Yeah. No, the tips are super welcome because, like I said, this is me trying to teach you what I've taught myself. So, yeah. No, that's and we'll give that a shot on this one.
Yeah, just think about it.
Yeah.
You take an 1/8 inch magic marker, put a little mark on it to find your sweet spot, and then you would just slightly tilt it and pull it using that. Never chatter, never squeal, and like you did with your fingers with the sawdust, it just disintegrates. Exactly the same thing.
Beautiful. All right, we'll give it a shot. And that was super similar to it was sometime last year when we had the skew demonstration. Just the amount of the skew that you actually use to cut compared to how big of a piece of metal the skew actually is pretty impressive. I still suck with a skew. I also don't do a ton of spindle turning. So, all right. So this one I haven't cleaned up the top on, and I forgot to do on the other one. So usually what I'll do for this one, as much as I said, don't use a pull cut. A lot of times for this, just kind of run it across the top of this just to get rid of any. Give ourselves a nice clean face to work with, because a lot of times when you buy pieces of wood, you'll get there's sealer on the end of it, or there's marks, or there's branding, or some stamp or something. So just giving yourself a nice flat surface to work with. It's nice and clean. And we go from there. All right, so now we're at that point where we've got a little bit of real estate to start working down the beginning of the wall here. And we can kind of start that foundation and work our way back down to there. didn't do on the first one, since we've got a bit more room to play with here, we're going a little bit shallower on the rim to try and just, so we don't have a ton of room to work with, but we do have enough room to get the tool kind of resting on here. So we can work our wall size down a bit thinner. Ooh, not that thin. Now the trick with doing something that's a bit more of a kind of deeper shape like this, oh, I got that one pretty good. You have to get a bit more of an interesting angle, and I'm a little too tall for this, sir. So you definitely have to kind of lean over it a little bit. It's one of the reasons that I moved the headstock. Well, the first reason I want to stick my tools in the end of that. But the other reason is that having room to move at the end of your lathe can be really, really helpful for this, because you have to get much steeper of an angle. So if you can really kind of reposition yourself to get enough support, you can get in here. I also just recently moved my shop around to the point where I can actually stand at the end of my lathe, because I also got that set of hollowing tools that's like 4 feet long, and I didn't have 4 feet of space until I decided to get the rest of the crap out of the way in there. But now I found the wonder of turning on the end of the lathe, and my back thanks me a lot, because now I can just kind of stand there and not have to bend over and do all sorts of funny stuff. You can literally just be right here and just work. So if you don't stand at the end of your lathe, I highly recommend trying it.
If your lathe does that.
If your lathe does that, yeah. If your lathe doesn't do that,
sucks to be you.
No, it's an excuse to buy a new lathe. I think the better thing is that you found a good excuse to buy a new lathe. Now, I wish I got one that had a rotating headstock too, but the hindsight's 20/20. Maybe I have a new reason to buy a new lathe. Although I've got the bigger brother of this one, and I do love it. Go back in with a smaller tool. And then as you start to do this, even though we're doing the step downs here, you might still start losing track of the wall thickness. So there's always room to go back. But the nice part about doing the steps is now that I look down, I can actually see where there's a bit of a ridge here. You guys probably can't see that from this view, but there is right about here a bit of a ridge that I could very, very easily come back in here and pick up, especially now that I have the smaller tool in hand, because I can really get in there. Yeah, that's more like it. Does this
Yeah.
tilt?
It does all sorts of things.
Oh, why didn't I do that like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, all the
Well,
arms,
that's
all
right.
the arms do something different.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to grasp this. Do you have the bevel resting
I
on
can't see.
one ridge while you're
Oh,
cutting
no.
the next?
Oh, no.
That's right. There's a half medium. There you go. Okay.
Trust me, that's still infinitely better for me.
Yeah.
So do I have the bevel, I'm sorry, what was it?
Do you have the bevel resting on one ridge while you're cutting into the next ridge? Is that what's going on?
Yes, so, maybe we can see from here. Yeah. So there's this kind of inner circle right here, right? And then we've got this outer one. This is what the tool is gonna rest on as we're approaching this cut. Can you see that? Yeah. So you're riding the bevel on this inner rim, and then just like we take out the middle, you're riding this bevel into here. The outer wall with this kind of steepness of a bowl is a bit different because you really have to kind of take more of a sweep into there, and there's not really a step to ride on. You're just riding on the outer wall at that point. Does that make a little?
I think so, yes.
Cool. So at this point, this is just on the wall. So now at this point, with the depth that we're at, so unlike the first one that we did, it's going to be really hard to kind of get accurate steps in there, at least to the point where you can really reach all of them. So this is actually the point where at a deeper one here, I would actually just start by riding the walls, and instead we're just going to start taking longer sweeping cuts as we get down towards the middle of the bottom here. So without going too much farther, this is where we would pull out the scraper again. Hopefully you still have enough of a burr to do your thing. We'll see. We're just doing our bottom here. And then we'll switch back around to our choked up grip a bit. Come on. So at this point, I probably come back in here. Honestly, I don't want to run this thing anymore because this has definitely lost its burr. Although the tips definitely helped a bit. I was trying to work on it, but she's lost her edge a bit there. But that said, we got our little wispies, and it still does the nice thing there. I'll clean this up for you, Rick. I know this is the wall.
Yeah.
But besides whacking this edge a little bit, the bottom could definitely use a little bit more work. But for the sake of not blowing up wood in front of people who are not wearing face shields, this is where we'll call it a day on this one for now. This guy's a little bit thinner. It's about like 3.5 mil. And we were still able to do that on a much different shape of a piece of wood there. We're not going to do that because Rick's going to yell at me. Oh, also a darker wood, but
Do you think you could put a new burr on with a honing part rather than a grinding wheel?
need a really gnarly diamond card for that. That definitely works with carbide, but to actually put a burr back on that, I think you need a
You
wheel.
really need the burr to work with you to do your.
Yeah.
Rick had taught me to always, your last pass, sharpen the tool once, make your last pass and put the tool away.
Mhm.
Whether you were inside or outside, and it makes plenty of sense.
Oh yeah, no, these things, like, I think that's one of the really hard parts about scrapers is a lot of people already let their regular turning tools get too dull, but that takes way longer than people think it does to start with.
Correct.
So a lot of people over sharpen when you don't actually need to. You can't really over sharpen one of these because you lose that burr so quickly. And if you had felt this when I brought it, I freshly sharpened this before I came today. You can
feel it.
There's not even a burr there anymore. Yeah, I've had nickels that are sharper than this right now. Yeah, that's. Does anyone have any other questions? That's pretty much it. So like I said, this is kind of an exercise really in a few kind of novel things, like running the scraper with a bit of a choke up and kind of rolling it a little bit. So it's kind of fun to learn how to do that. But otherwise, this is largely just an exercise in what not to do. So don't use a mortise. You can use green wood, but I wouldn't recommend starting with that. There's a lot of flexing in either direction. Small, slow cuts with steps. Did I say don't use a mortise? I'm gonna say it again. Don't use a mortise. Sandpaper is your friend. Speed, and then sand the outside because you definitely do want to hold it. You don't have to sand it down to like 600 or something ridiculous and put a full coat of finish on it, but you definitely don't want just raw wood that still has some stuff left on the outside.
What type of speed were you using today?
About 1300, which I probably go a little bit faster at home, but given that I'm standing in front of a bunch of people that are not wearing face shields, for something that size, I'd probably hit that around like 1600 or so for something that size. And the smaller you go, the faster speed you can go. There is such a thing as too fast, obviously, but like if you try to do this at 500, 600 RPM, you're never going to get anywhere with it.
When you talk about green wood,
Yeah.
how green are you talking about? What moisture content would you be? Is it green right off the log? Or?
I don't.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of like a range of green. So I don't know. I think like if you think about building furniture, they talk about like furniture dryness being like 11% moisture or less. I don't know where I would really say green wood ends. Does anyone, do you get to have like thoughts on that? Because like when it's wet, and it'll soak you. But then there's definitely like a certain moisture content that if you pick it up and it's still kind of like wet to the touch. I don't know if I call that green, but I call it not dry.
I would say Roland will tell us that thin piece over there, Roland, what would you say the water's spitting at you when you did that?
Yeah.
I never turned dry.
Right. No, I guess his question is,
Oh yeah.
I think his question was how wet, like that spitting water at you.
Oh, that
Sure.
would have been just like 25%.
Yeah.
It's just freshly cut.
Yeah.
But the thing about freshly cut is you can't do what he just showed you to do with green wood. That it just can't do it. You would want to put a mark here, and so when you use your gauge, you always use it in that same spot. And you always want to finish, you go in about a half inch, and that becomes finished. You never go back to that finish again, because as soon as this is already, because it's green wood, it's already moving. And that's why you put the mark there. So when you put your gauge on, it's always that mark. Because over here now is going to be a different thickness. So if you're trying to go here and pretty soon you don't have any wood left. You know, so you always use that one mark, a pencil mark there, and then you always know, okay, this is where I want to put my gauge. And then I can walk it through. And the same thing with the light. I'll use the light for the thickness because the different shades of light. You know, you'll start with a white light and then it turns into a yellow light and turns into a different color. So each thickness will be a different color light. And that's the color you're looking for. So you're trying to find out which one you find. And then once you find that light, then if it's that same color all the way through, you don't have to have a problem. But you still want to check it with the gauge just because, but you always want to finish, never go back. Because he was doing with the scraper, you can't do that with green wood. And again, I never do dry wood, just almost never. Except those tops, and they were cracking on me. You know, so that's how I do mine anyway. And then I'll put a light on, I'll shine the light on it, and I have a really powerful light. So I make sure it's going through my wood so I can see what's going on. And I don't use the scraper because you only got this much space. So you have a sharp tool, the bowl gouge is sharp. And that's going to give you a nice finish because you're running the bevel through. And then do another step. And then another thing is you want to make sure that once you start doing the inside, you're not going to stop and go in and have supper and come back out. Because it's already done tricks. It's not, you can't do it. So you want to be able to know, okay, I'm going to start and finish at the same time. Without walking away. And then then it's going to dry and it's going to walk like that thing there. And I got a nice pole at home that's got it closed up like a quahog shell. But you can sand them down so because you got it slow, you put it slow, and if it's fast, then it's going boom, 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 boom. But you can still sand them in there, but just slow. And it'll do a nice job. You can get a nice sanding job that way. But I just like the green wood.
Yeah.
It's more fun.
Oh,
It cuts
it's a ton of fun,
faster,
yeah.
it cuts easier. And once you learn how to use green wood and know what it's going to do, because I like to do big stuff. And if it's green and it's big, I already know how it's going to walk. And if I know how it's going to walk, that will determine how I'm going to shape the bowl. So I'm not going to do a piece that's going to walk with a big undercut. This is going to crack. So I'm going to have a nice outside flare that's going to go down. So now it's going to, and people love, because I sell a lot of my work, and people love stuff that's all wonky. And I'll tell them, that's not round. And she says, yeah, that's not why I'm buying it, because look at it, it's not round. I can't go to Target and buy this. Because it has a character all its own.
That's the beautiful thing about green wood, because one of the reasons I like a lot of people like, when people are going to buy a nice table, they want like a 10-foot perfectly clear, no knot, white straight grain rift cut oak, and that's boring. Wood is a natural material. Let it do its thing. I love the knots, I love the cracks. I love, a lot of people they twice turn stuff because they don't like when stuff cracks. I never twice turn pretty much anything. Because I like to let it do what it's going to do, let it be its thing. But to Roland's point about doing the super thin stuff with green wood, you can, but that would be a totally different demonstration because, like you said, you're not going back. By the time you made that first cut, it's done. But the nice part is you can get super thin with just a bowl gouge to begin with because the green wood's a lot more
Forgiving?
That's the word I was going to use, and I hesitated because I'm not sure that's the word I want. I'm not sure that's the message, but you can get it thinner because it's easier to cut, and you
That's
don't
why
have
it's just
to.
easier to cut.
Yeah,
It's not
it is.
forgiving.
Yeah.
It's easier to
Yeah.
cut. It cuts because it's like lubricated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All that water is
Yeah.
keeping that tool cool.
And it's just
It
much
keeps the
softer
wood
too.
cool.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes it easy. But do a bunch of them, and then after you do a bunch of them, you might get a good one. Well, who cares if they crack, because it's green wood.
Well, the nice
Pick it
part
up on
about
the
it,
side of the road and cut it in half and do it.
or I called the tree service. I called the tree service a few weeks ago, and he let me come by. I filled up my pickup truck full of it, and drove off. And he's like, yeah, you know what it's worth. Just like, throw me a few bucks when on your way out. Like, you know what it's worth. Like, don't go and sell it for $3,000. I'll be pissed off. And I tried to hand him like $150, and he's like, what the hell are you doing this? And he handed me back and just kept the 20. And then I got a truck full of green wood, and if I ruined every single piece of that and had to throw it in the fire pit at that point, like, who cares?
$20.
Yeah, who cares? Or just find on the side of the road. But I live in North Providence. So, yeah. Every time I hear a chainsaw, I'm like, it's not mine. Where is it?
I had gone to the Bristol transfer station to pick up some compost.
Yeah.
And they got loads of trees there. And I said, can I come back with a chainsaw? He said, sure.
Shit.
And where
Bristol
Bristol.
transfer station. All right. So I'm in the process of trying to tune up and get working again my chainsaw, because I haven't had a lot of need for it for the last couple of years. All I've had is could do with my DeWalt battery.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can't do logs.
No, and I ran into the same situation because I bought an electric one for inside the shop when when I put something up on the lathe that's too big, it's really easy. You're not making smoke. It's like just quick. You go through it. And then I had a Craftsman that I got from Craftsman that I got from Lowe's, and I fired it up one day and it just didn't work anymore. No rhyme or reason. Just treated perfectly fine. It just didn't. It just decided to die that day. And then my birthday was a few weeks ago, so I was like, Steel's a nice brand, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I went and bought like a nice 50cc,
And they start right up.
Oh man. And it's like hot knife through butter. So that was worth every penny, but yeah.
And buy the pre-mixed gas.
I do. I did.
Because the regular gas gets skunky and the carburetor goes to shit and then you gotta throw it away.
Oh yeah.
Because they're throwaways.
Well, and
When
apparently
you say premix, what do you mean?
It's
sell
a
it.
high grade gasoline.
Yeah.
With the oil already
True
mixed in.
fuel.
Yeah, and you buy it in the store.
Well, and some of their newer chainsaws now, it actually voids the warranty if you mix your own gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
I buy
steel
mine by
does
the 5
void the
gallon.
warranty.
But I mix mine home,
Yeah.
but I start with a 5 gallon of that height. And there's no lead in it. It's unleaded.
So-
There's lead in it. It's not unleaded.
It's actually racing fuel.
Yeah.
It's a little under. It's not
Is that why it
high
tastes so
grade,
good?
it's a little under that racing fuel.
Yeah.
Because racing fuel, if you're using that, it'll warranty goes to.
Well,
But
if
they
you go,
have a gas.
What protective gear do people use when they're using chainsaws?
Oh, flip flops and sunglasses.
Oh.
That's what I use.
Yeah. No, I mean, with the electric chainsaw, like whatever, because it doesn't keep running when you take your finger off the trigger, and so it's like nothing really. But when I picked up that chainsaw and I was like, this is a real big boy chainsaw. I also picked a pair of chaps off the shelf, and it's like even if I'm just gonna go trim a real small piece and I know I'll have it turn on for 30 seconds, I'm getting strapped up because I need all 10 fingers to continue working. Probably don't need most of my toes, but I want to keep them anyway. But yeah, I mean, the Kevlar chaps, steel toe boots, hearing protection. Probably should get a face shield. I don't have one. Don't tell anyone. But yeah.
If you've ever seen a demonstration of what chaps will do with a chainsaw, or what a chainsaw will do to a pair of chaps, it'll kind of change your opinion on whether chaps are worth it to have or not.
So there's a guy on YouTube that I've watched for years, Blacktail Studio. He does a lot of flat work. He doesn't do any turning. It's all epoxy, mostly epoxy tables, but like they're really well done, really well narrated, and does some interesting stuff. But he did do a video on shop safety and what different tools do to you. So he got a bunch of like ballistic gel hands with real bones in them and everything. He got the chaps. He ran a fake hand through a table saw, through a jointer, through like a router bit to show, and all filmed in high speed. And you can actually see what those things actually do to you because you touch it for a second, and you're like, wow, I had 3 fingers here. Where do they go? Yeah. You can watch where they go in this case. But yeah, when those chaps are like, yeah, it'll still cut you, but it's kind of almost like when they work right, it's almost like a saw stop for a chainsaw.
Yeah. It clogs it right up and just jams it till it can't turn anymore. And some of the demos that I've seen the videos on, and it was like, laying flat and just taking the blade and going down onto it. And in most cases, it didn't make it all the way through from the outside to the inside. In one case, just a couple of tiny nicks that came through on the inside.
Right.
And you think about it, you're putting your force like this, and if it goes, to shut it off, you've got to slam the handle forward, which means you're putting that much more downward force.
Right.
And if that's your leg, you're going to go most of the way through your leg.
Well, the chaps aren't cheap, but they're much cheaper than a prosthetic leg. You know?
Right.
It's,
Oh,
and then if you, yeah, if
my
you,
father-in-law put it onto his leg, and yeah, he almost lost his leg.
yeah,
It's out in the middle of Iowa, so it wasn't no quick way to the hospital.
and if you ruin a $120 pair of chaps and ruin your underwear, that's all you got to replace. Like, you know, it's, so.
You know what's interesting? I kind of like got a lesson in woodworking when I was, going by a grocery store meat market, and you look in the back, and these are the kind of people, you see them carrying like a goat on their shoulder, and you look in the back and there's a bandsaw, and you go, oh.
Yeah, except that bandsaw is way stronger than the one you got in your wood shop too. That's the scary part. This is like 3.5 horsepower, but yeah, wood is scary stuff, and definitely respected. And like the safety gear is always worth more than it'll pay for
The
itself.
result.
It'll pay for itself the first time you really need it. So
And the next thing you buy is gonna be a face shield.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't know
I
if you
mean,
saw the story in the AAW magazine where the lady in Hawaii had the bulb blow up in her face. 8 different surgeries by the time they put her face back together.
yeah. Oh, and even if it kicks the wrong way, if it kicks, it's going right back in here. So I do use that face shield, but that's
From that point on, I have one on each machine.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. I have 3 machines. I have one on each machine. No excuse. No matter where I go, there's one there.
yeah. It's not something to toy with. No.
She didn't hurt her eyes. She had goggles. Broke her jaw, broke cheekbones, eye sockets. 7 or 8 different operations before she got back to normal.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing too, besides all the actual gear that you wear, is having some sort of sawhorse, like sawbuck. Get a few 2x4s, screw them together in an X frame, and like make sure that your log is just stable. Don't cut on the ground. If you cut on the ground, you hit your driveway, you're gonna break your chain. That's gonna fly right back up and hit you. Like even if that doesn't happen, you're still gonna have to probably buy a new chain. And that,
I just finished making a new stand
Yeah.
from pictures from David Ellsworth.
Yeah, remember? Yeah, I took
took
away.
pictures, and I found those pictures from, I don't know, 6-7 years ago or more. And it's like, okay, I didn't do any measurements. Wait a minute, that's a 2x4. Okay, so let me back off from that, and I just got it all set up
See
now.
if you can find a picture for him with David Ellsworth sitting on the edge of the lathe. Remember he used to sit on the
Oh,
edge
yeah.
of the lathe?
I do that too.
He would do it on the edge of the lathe. Me, Rick, Mike Murray, there was 4 or 5, 3 days up there with him.
Oh, I love that.
Nicest time to, but he got on, to demonstrate hollow turning with me, sat on the edge of the lathe right there with the tool. He just sat, and he and I were this there while he was sitting there on the lathe doing the work.
That's in his book, which is what after I read that book, Ellsworth on wood turning. I did my first hollow form, and before I had the stabilizer and everything stood at the end of it, when I just had to like really stand close, and of course like you don't want to be standing like this all day because hollowing takes freaking forever. I saw that in the book, and I was like, I was looking at it one day, and I was like, all right.
David's about the size of
Yeah.
and he just sat on the lathe, and
It's not comfortable, but
it bothered him in the least bit.
oh, I mean,
He just,
he's got a worn in saddle at this point. You know? Yeah, I'm grabbing a pillow.
we
next
had
time,
3
but-
crazy days with him.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Fun.
I love his. He's always got the ad in the back of what American Wood Turner that comes every few months, and it's just like you've got all these fancy full page ads, and then his is just gray, just plain as day. But you look at the name and you go,
We went down when he was still in
Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Cool.
yeah, thank you guys. But yeah, that's about it. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. Positivity.